Viewer, until a few weeks ago, Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannun was a bit of a cartoonish character with his fake stern manner, jabbing at the screen in his videos. He cut the figure of a wannabe rabble-rouser desperate for attention. The last few weeks have proven beyond any measure of doubt that while Pannu is still very much a caricature of what he perhaps hopes to be, one must admit that he is being taken much more seriously now than anyone thought he would, perhaps even he himself. Next week, viewer, the chief of America's Federal Bureau of Investigation will be flying to India to discuss the Indian investigation into allegations by the US that India hired assassins to bump off Pannu in New York City. This is by no means a normal visit. It's the first visit by an FBI chief to India in 12 years. Imagine that. And the fact that Pannu is one of the talking points raises the Khalistani terrorist profile immeasurably. Knowing Pannu's obsession with attention, he's very likely in total ecstasy these days, even though he's likely changed his addresses to be out of sight. But here's the thing. Pannu, perhaps emboldened by the attention and the US case, has just issued an open threat to attack India's parliament on or before December the 13th as revenge for this alleged plot to kill him. December the 13th, everyone knows, is the date on which in 2001 India's parliament was attacked by Pakistani terrorists. The question now before the United States is as follows. Do you interpret Pannu's warning about attacking India's parliament as a threat of terrorism or not? I'm not even getting into whether Pannu even has the capacity to carry out such attacks, but this question must be asked. In my view, the United States can no longer hide behind the ruse that it is acting to protect a US citizen. Because is the Biden administration then suggesting that a US citizen proscribed as a terrorist by India, a terrorist who openly issues specific threats of terror, will not be acted upon? Viewer, you and I both know there's more to this. The least we can agree on is that Pannu is no ordinary American citizen. Whether or not Indian death squads were hunting him on American soil, the fact is the world sees and notices the alacrity with which the United States is using its institutions of government to protect and speak for a man who has published monetary bounties calling for the killing of Indian diplomats, warned about the bombing of Air India flights, and now most recently threatened to attack and bring down India's parliament. A large part of the American think tank and strategic analyst circuit believes this is going to play out badly for India and that India stands to lose diplomatically. Several of India's most prominent experts believe that the US case for Pannu isn't really about getting to any truth about any death squads or proving anything, but rather to turn the geopolitical screws on India in order to keep its vaunted independent foreign policy in check, draw it away from Russia, and tether India to a space where it is more of a non-NATO ally type than a rising country that thinks for itself and acts for itself. But at the center of all these lofty ideas is a cartoonish terrorist. Just look at this guy, who's no longer being treated like a cartoon. That's the problem. A terrorist who appears to be immune to US law that would otherwise take such threats with the seriousness they deserve. Unlike India's contemptuous response to Canada's allegations on the Hardeep Singh Nijjar terror killing, India's response to the US case is necessarily more measured and sober. Only the foolish will see this as India being a pushover. Different relationships will obviously trigger different responses. The India-American relationship is far bigger and deeper than a cartoonish terrorist and his silly YouTube videos. Those eager to look beyond the obviously messy nature of this affair will see this as somehow an affirmation of India's rise in the global order. Why else would a close international partner spend so much energy on a proscribed terrorist? This is way beyond the hilarious bug-eyed histrionics of a cartoonish terrorist whose biggest weapon so far has been spray paint cans and YouTube videos. But when the FBI chief lands in Delhi next week to discuss this cartoonish terrorist, India knows the game is very much on and will take a while to play itself out. And now let me tell you about the FBI chief arriving in India and what exactly he's going to do. Is this going to raise the stakes and raise the temperatures? India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar has already spoken out about it. Watch this report.
They have the right to vote.
India's most wanted terrorist and Khalistan backer, Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, threatening to target the Indian Parliament on the anniversary of an earlier attack on Parliament on December 13, more than 2 decades ago. This is not the first time that Pannun, a US-based lawyer and Khalistan terror backer, has threatened to target India. He had earlier issued a threat to target Air India aircraft, warning passengers in the US and Canada not to fly Air India after the 19th of November if they valued their lives. But is this free speech, threatening the temple of Indian democracy, or threatening passengers of Air India, alleging their lives would be in danger? These are some of the questions that India intends to put to the director of US Federal Bureau of Investigation, Christopher A. Wray, when he visits India for the first time since taking over the bureau in 2017. This is also the first time that an FBI director is visiting India in the past 12 years.
I gotta understand India. And so to me that professionally is so exciting because, you know, our Secretary of Treasury, this was the #1 country she went to outside the United States 4 times this year. Secretary of State just came here for the 3rd time. Secretary of Defense for the 2nd time. FBI Director is here next week. You know, you name it every week. It's an exhausting job.
The US had, on the 29th of November, indicted an Indian national, Nikhil Gupta, in an alleged plot to murder Khalistan terror supporter Pannun in the United States. Biden administration officials say they are taking up the matter very seriously.
We have noted at the most senior levels of this government, the Secretary of State has raised this directly with his foreign counterpart, that we take this issue very seriously. They told us they would conduct an investigation. They have publicly announced an investigation, and now we'll wait to see the results of the investigation, but it's something we take very seriously.
However, India has repeatedly told the US it expects the United States to take action against terrorists and gangsters in the US, while promising to investigate the issue raised by the State Department.
That insofar as the US is concerned, certain inputs were given to us as part of our security cooperation with the United States. Those inputs were of concern to us because they related to the nexus of organized crime, trafficking, and other matters. So, because it has a bearing on our own national security, it was decided to institute an inquiry into the matter, and an inquiry committee has been constituted.
India is keeping its powder dry to expose US double standards in dealing with elements like Pannun, who use American soil to target India unchecked. Bureau Report, India Today.
And make sure they decide about their